Thank God you showed up. After watching my own friends get slaughtered, ain't no way I'm going back over there.
Hey, slow down. How much did y'all have to drink tonight?
What? You think this is a joke? We're not flying!
You two stay put, and I'm me.
In 1970, the leader, Frederick Brooks, took his group of some 140 followers across the country and moved to a new place. It was a huge area of land that they now called home. 140 acres of land, and that too just outside of Bowling Green, Kentucky. And how he came to be the leader of such assemblage is an interesting story, a stuff of legends even today. Frederick grew up in a posh area with rich, snobby, posh people running around everywhere. Now, he did not have a problem with that. His problem came from the fact that he was not one of them when he really wanted to be one of them. Growing up, it was a tough situation for him, honestly, due to that he was unable to make many friends. He had just one friend, Barry Frost. With time, they had become best friends. They came from similar backgrounds, went to the same high school, and even played football together. They soon grew thick as thieves. Frederick got lucky and got a chance to play pro football. He took to it readily and wholeheartedly. Barry, however, did not go in that direction. He picked up on real estate during his college days and dived fully into it. Even though they went their separate ways career-wise, their friendship did not get affected by it at all. In fact, after the passing of their parents, they had grown even closer to each other. And now, 10 years later, both of them were really successful in their own right and had made quite a name for themselves in their respectful fields. After 10 long years, Frederick decided to retire from the sport. He was just not into getting banged up for the game anymore. 10 years of it were quite enough for him. 10 years of successful careers had also made them quite rich. Frederick had always been very flashy in his everyday approach in life, so he wanted to show off that newfound hard-earned riches, and for that, he wanted to join his local country club. He had always wanted to be a part of this exclusive club. The golfing, the exquisite parties, the horseback riding extravaganzas, and outrageous tea affairs always held a special charm for him. But moreover, he wanted the superiority, the privilege that came along with being a member of an exclusive club. He did not have the means to achieve that earlier, but now he did. Now he could get into the exclusive members club, he thought. So he applied for the membership along with Barry. But the problem with that was the other existing members of the country club. They were all the old money, born wealthy snobs, so they did not prove to be as friendly and welcoming as one might have hoped for. They declined his membership. Frederick and Barry both were not too happy about it. It had hit their ego. Frederick especially could not fathom that he still could be rejected. Even after he had made a name for himself and had gotten himself a fortune, he was still not good enough for an exclusive country club. In an effort to make him calm down, Barry suggested to Frederick that maybe they should make a new club, an entity only they had any say about. Frederick loved this idea of his own private club, so he gave the go-ahead to the idea. Soon, they started to build up their own private members-only club. They started small. Barry picked up an old warehouse building that just got listed for sale. The previous owner of the club had let it go because it was lost to bankruptcy. They turned it into their headquarters first. It was a place where the whole plan was set up, where they decided and planned how they were going to achieve the goal. They decided to approach the newly rich people of the town first, and they came to find out that many of them had gotten rejected from the club too. Frederick and Barry took that as a golden opportunity and invited them over to join their own exclusive, invitation-only club. After recruiting some of them, both friends started to include the upper and middle-class citizens of the town. They also targeted some important, respected people of the town and got them to join their club. Soon the headquarters turned into the building of the actual club. In a mere 2 months, they had inducted some 113 members in their private members club. Steadily, they had started building up their reputation around town. People were more interested in their club than the previous one. Frederick was proud of the achievement he had made, until he woke up one day from his sleep and was told that the building of their clubhouse had just burned down the last night. Investigations proved it to be a deliberate move. Their success was becoming a danger to them now. This new challenge, a new threat, prompted Barry to try to convince Frederick to move far away from their old town, far away from any possible harm's way. On Barry's insistence, Frederick gave in. He agreed to move, but only if he could bring his club along with him. It seemed like an absurd idea. They were talking about moving more than 100 people, some of them with families too, to another place. But they got many of the members to agree to the move. In fact, most of them decided to move the club as a whole. The few who did not were let go. It was not an easy situation to handle and plan the whole move and setup, but they made it work. Barry picked up a huge piece of land with over 140 acres just outside of Bowling Green, Kentucky. That was going to be the new home for their club. They started building small village houses along the property and even built a town square in the middle. The kitchen hall, the mess, the showers, the health clinic, the parks, the school, and much more was built there. To top it off was a 12-foot wall built around the property line, said to keep out the trespassers. By the time the construction was done, this whole setup had attracted even more followers to join on the move. All the club members were moved there and were assigned houses. They started living a new life at a new place. All of this looked too good to be true, and then it really turned out to be not so good after all. It started off small. Barry hired ex-military men to run security around and inside the property line. No big deal, of course. It was for the town's own security, everyone reasoned. Soon Frederick marked himself as the mayor. No big deal either. They had followed him there after all, everyone rationalized. But as we have heard countless times before, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. Frederick had gained great power over the people, and that had started messing with his head even more. He wanted to be the absolute authority in that city, a king, if you will. He made the place his own personal kingdom. No one was allowed to leave. No one was allowed to even contact the outside world. No one was allowed to disobey him. By the time people realized what was happening, it was already too late. If anyone tried to rebel, they were faced with Barry and his aggressive security, putting fear in them. And if somehow someone ever managed to leave the place, well, Frederick kept the local police on his payroll for just that purpose too. Just to look the other way whenever they came across someone trying to escape from the village. And if you were caught doing any of these, you were punished in public. Tracy and Sean had been friends since they were in diapers, and now they were legal adults. When they were mere kids, lived in a normal town, went to a normal school, they had many dreams and aspirations beyond this age. They had planned and talked together on what they wanted to become and where they wanted to go, what they wanted to study, and what they wanted to pursue in the future. They had been very excited for those days to come. But it all changed when their families met this Mr. Frederick. Their parents joined his exclusive members-only club, and they were hooked on him. Everything he said, they thought, was great. Tracy and Sean had also met him once at a party. He was charming and very charismatic. They liked him too. And then there were talks of moving to another town in their households. Their parents discussed it in hushed whispers, the move, the pros and cons of it. They were excited too. Moving to a new place meant too much fun for just them, especially for them. Their families got ready for the move like everyone else in that club. They sold their houses, quit their jobs, the kids dropped out of their schools. They packed, they said their goodbyes, and then they were on their merry way to their new homes. It was a huge progression of cars and moving trucks when they set off on the journey. Many of the families were moving to their new home together. It was an exciting adventure. It was a long journey, but when they reached the new place, it got even more exciting. Everyone got assigned their houses and they went ahead to set them up. Again, very exciting. They were enrolled into their new school that was also built in the same complex, a walled city just for them. They had a communal kitchen where locals were assigned to work in shifts, and they cooked the same foods for everyone in the place. Everyone ate at the same place and at the same times. A huge dining hall in the center of town. In fact, everything there was communal for everyone. There was a huge town center where all the necessities were. A communal laundry hall, communal showers. Thank God they had separate toilets in their houses. But all in all, it was a huge community setup. Everyone loved it at the beginning. It was something new, something extraordinary. But soon enough, everyone got tired of it. Soon, the novelty wore off. Soon, they grew bored of their new routines too. They didn't have many options inside the walled city anymore, and they wanted to explore the outside world again. And that's when the problems began. They could not leave this place. They could not go outside the wall. They were not allowed to. There were protests, of course, grumblings and shouts and cursing fits, but all of it did nothing for them. Oh, wait. It did something for them. It made the security around the town very tight. Where there were only verbal reminders to not cross the wall before, now there were physical reminders too. Many of the backs of the people were covered in welts and bruises would attest to that. Soon after, Mr. Frederick declared himself the sheriff of the place too, and then life was all a mess. But now, Tracy and Sean were above 18, ready to go to college, ready to pursue their dreams, ready to head towards achieving their goals. But they couldn't. They were not allowed to. They were expected to work in the town now, like everyone else did. They even got assigned the kitchen duty on graduation from school. They were to work the night shift there, clean the dishes, stay there, wait and see if anyone needed anything from the kitchen during the night, in case of an emergency or something. They hated the job. They talked to their parents about their dreams, but only got hushed scolding in return. Their parents forbade them to ever speak about their displeasure out loud. They feared for their lives. They wanted their kids to have a good education and a bright future ahead of them, of course. But they didn't want their kids to meet the same fate that the other rebels had met before them. Public floggings at the very least, and death at the most. Some years ago, there was the case of Bill. Sweet and kind Bill. He lived a couple houses down from Tracy and Sean, who were neighbors in this town too. He was also a few years older than them, a senior in school, always kind and compassionate to them. He always had some nice words to say to them whenever they came across him. He had always been so full of life and charm when at their old town. And here too, he was really energetic and bubbling with a deep passion for life initially. He had been full of life until this place sucked that life right out of him. Figuratively at first, and then quite literally too. After moving to this town, he had quite early on realized that they were held almost in captivity here. The charm of all the new, exciting things had worn off quite early on for Bill. That was why he wanted to leave this place. He tried to ask around, but got the C in negative every time. So he started resenting this place, as well as Mr. Frederick. And he was quite vocal about his resentment too. For that, he had received some punishments too. Severe duties, harsh shifts, public scoldings, and beatings too. After quite a hard beating at the town square one day, he was seemingly cured from his rebellious thoughts. He never talked bad about the town again, or talked about leaving the place after that. In fact, he didn't talk to anyone much after that. He went to work, did it diligently, and went back home. He didn't have any other activities after that except the regular food and shower runs. That had also been minimized due to his new work shift. He was working night shifts in the kitchen hall just like Tracy and Sean now were. Everyone had almost forgotten about him and his misdemeanors when it all came to another end. One evening, when all the townsfolk were done with their day jobs and the night shift workers were on the move, there started a commotion in the town square. It was the busiest time of day at that place. Almost everyone from the town would always gather there, just like that fateful day. Everyone stopped what they were doing and started paying attention to what was about to happen. The authorities brought out Bill, handcuffed and limping, and soon it was revealed as to why. In the early morning, while drinking with his friend and neighbor, Bill had revealed that he was going to run away from the town very soon. In fact, the plan was already fully devised with the time and the way it was set. He was so close to leaving this place behind, his plan was already set in motion. The neighbor, wanting to save his own life, fearing that he might be suspected as an accomplice if Bill actually did manage to run away, had told everything to the authorities. They had tortured poor Bill in the middle of the town square, right in front of everyone, and they did not hold back at all. By the time they were done, Bill was a quivering mess, bloodied and bruised, broken beyond repair. They kept asking him how he planned to actually leave the place. What exactly was his secret that he had up his sleeve? But Bill did not budge on that. He did not reveal his plan at all. This went on for a long while. Everyone stood there with horrified and scared expressions on their faces. They just stood there and watched as a beloved young man was beaten to a pulp right in front of them. They did nothing to help him as he was convulsing on the ground, screaming in agony. They did nothing as he was forcibly picked up from the ground and hanged. They did nothing as the fight slowly left his body and he stopped thrashing around in pain. They did nothing as he finally stopped breathing. And they did nothing as only a lifeless body was left in place of once full of life, Bill. And they learned the lesson Frederick wanted them to learn, as he had Bill mercilessly killed in front of the whole town. While the townspeople learned to never question their sheriff and never tried to even think of leaving, Tracy and Sean also learned a lesson that day. They were not going to give up. They were going to leave this hellhole at any cost. They were going to look for the way, the plan that Bill had made. If he said there was such thing as a way out, then there was definitely a way out. They would just have to make sure to find it. And try and find that way out, they definitely did. They looked around everywhere and found nothing. They searched the whole town surreptitiously, diligently, but they could not find anything. They had gotten quite disheartened, but never gave up completely. Call it a coincidence, or call it fate. They also got assigned to the same duty Bill was working on right before his death, the night shift at the kitchen hall. And late one night, and again, call it an incident of fate, Tracy was rearranging the kitchen cabinets when he accidentally pushed hard against the back wall of the cabinet, which fell over. It was hollow behind the makeshift wall of board. Sean quickly rushed over to him to help, and he too came to a halt at the scene in front of them. They both looked at each other, eyes blown wide with shock. The kitchen hall was built half underground to tackle the temperature issues, but it appeared to have come in handy because it looked like there was a whole tunnel built under there, under the ground, beside the kitchen. They looked at each other and came to a realization at the same time. "Bill," they whispered together. Now there was nothing left for them to do except explore the tunnel, and explore it they did all right. It went on for miles. Bill must have been working on it for quite some time. It seemed to have been dug clumsily, hurriedly, but it served the purpose anyway. Once they had come crawling back out of the tunnel, they had come to a conclusion. They had found a way out. The next few days they spent working on the plan. They estimated the distance from the kitchen and the wall and how much more they had to dig. It was only a couple 100 meters of digging left till they reached the wall. They finished that in the dead of night, and then decided to go ahead for a couple 100 more. They wanted to come out at a safe distance away from the wall and out of the security range. They calculated the appropriate timing for their escape based on the security rounds and all that, and finally, they were ready to run away. They decided to go for it during the day, a time when everything was in full session. It was a golden opportunity. And as they were on the night duty mostly, no one would find their absence surprising during the day. While the classes were going on in school, Tracy reported a fire in the school building. Everyone's focus turned towards that. There were dozens of children in that building. Everyone wanted to save them. After reporting the fire, both Tracy and Sean hurriedly made their way towards the kitchen house. Once inside, they quickly looked around to make sure no one was watching them and dived into the tunnel, crawling as fast as they possibly could, while everyone else was running wild trying to put out the fire. As they ran out of that place and finally came to the end of the tunnel, they scrambled up and began running again, just to be a safe distance away from that godforsaken place. Once they had deemed the distance safe enough, they walked out onto the road. They quickly waved down a passing car for a lift. The car pulled over, and they looked in. They saw a priest in the driving seat, waving them to jump in, and they hurried in. Upon the questions about their disheveled appearance, they told the priest that they had escaped from a town that's run by a corrupt brainwasher. As they kept on rambling about that madman, the priest began to take out his teeth and pulled on his face, revealing a mask. It was Frederick in disguise, staring through his rearview mirror, laughing at their dumbfounded expressions.